Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Black Swan Capitalist YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well. I'm excited to have Martin Armstrong joining us today, someone with deep insights into the intersection of global finance and geopolitics. Martin, it's an absolute pleasure to see you again. How are you?
Well, trying to survive another crazy, a crazy day, a crazy week. Just interesting times, as they say.
I can imagine. We're always saying the same thing here. So, a lot to talk about. Let's dive right into it. I'd like to start with gold. There is a lot happening in the gold market. We're hearing out about a potential audit at Fort Knox. That's some of the most recent news, which hasn't happened in decades or at all, I think. But at the same time, there's been just significant movements of gold from the United Kingdom even to the US. And it almost feels like they're trying to get everything in place before an audit. So what do you make of this?
Well, there's also two aspects. One is that there are concerns about a tariff going on with the EU. And you have to understand how these trade numbers actually work. They're not really counting the number of BMWs or Toyotas at the dock. It's just really the gross amount of dollars going back and forth. Like Trump just, put in specific tariff on like aluminum or steel or something. But when you're talking about a general tariff, it's everything. Okay, because they're not really distinguishing, anything other than that. And I can tell you, for example, back in really the early 90s, I was helping the Japanese really reduce the trade deficit with the United States. And knowing how the statistics work, we would just buy gold in New York, ship it and sell it in London. It doesn't matter what you're doing. We would basically just do that. And from the trade numbers perspective, oh, look, they bought, $1 billion worth of U.S. goods. No, it's just gold, So if you understand how the statistics work, then it's easy to actually manipulate them, honestly. But then again, you have jumping ahead to the geopolitical issues. The prospect of war going on in Europe is also leading to gold moving to the United States. You have to, if you go back and you look, the U.S. was basically bankrupt in 1896, and J.P. Morgan put together a $100 million gold loan to bail out the Treasury. Then after World War I, we had already, become the financial capital of the world. It displaced Britain. By the end of World War II, U.S. ended up with 76% of the official gold reserves. All right. So it was World War I and II that made the United States, an industrial power. Otherwise, you're looking at really, we would have been technically just a bunch of farmers. All right. So, so international geopolitical issues also impact things. And what I've been hearing is that a lot of people are very concerned and have been moving gold from Europe to the United States, basically because they're afraid that Europe is going to continue with the war. And secondly, that you have the question of tariffs. Would there be a restraint, capital controls, things of this nature? When you do go into war, and I've been, advising my European clients, you better get money to help, out of Europe, pretty quick. You look at World War I, what did they do? They immediately shut down the markets, the stock markets were closed, etc. When war begins, they're afraid of capital fleeing. All right, so it would be behooving upon them to get the gold out of London and bring it over to the United States, just as they did in World War I and II. So, I mean, those are the real impact, from the average person and institutions that are over there. You have to really look at hedging your bets. I mean, then we're going to see about, the audits from Musk and Doge on the Fed, etc. I mean, those will be interesting. Because, I mean, technically the U.S., was minting some gold coins and selling them. So, is that accounting proper? I mean, you can even put on YouTube. I mean, the day before 9/11, it was $2.3 trillion missing from the defense budget. Rumsfeld promised an investigation, and the plane supposedly or conveniently hit the very room where all the records were, and they have flunked their 7th audit so far.
Yep.
So, I mean, I would say that one, you have gold does not really go up with inflation. That's kind of just a sales pitch. I mean, if you look at it, gold peaked in 1980, went down for 19 years, and national debt went up, inflation went up. It had no impact. Gold rises when there is a question of confidence in the government. So, for example, even going into 1980, if you look from 76, gold fell to about $100. Then it by December 79, it finally rose to about 400. And then from December 79 to January 21st, it went from 400 to 875. Why? That's when Russia invaded Afghanistan. So it's geopolitical. So this is what I'm talking about, that the risk of war in Europe is very, very real. And that, can take gold up, quite dramatically. I mean, forget the issue of any audit at Fort Knox. I mean, these are the geopolitical issues will send it up. Gold will go to a premium. And Europeans, that's basically all they're going to be able to do, because you're not going to be able to really deal with the currency. The banks will be restricted. I mean, Italy already, if you're Italian and you go to get on the plane and you got a lot of gold jewelry on, they say take it off and they want to weigh it.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, there are definitely considerations in that area. It's more than just an audit of Fort Knox. So I think the geopolitical things will be enough to really create some havoc in the gold markets. And there's also shortages developing in base metals, things of this nature, which are typical when you go into war situations. You can even get a book on U.S. coins, and you'll see during World War II, nickel was more valuable than silver. So the 5-cent nickels, we call them, were all made out of basically 98% silver during the war. And then they went back to nickel afterwards, because they need things like copper and nickel for weapons and things of this nature. So there's always, some ratios you got to pay attention to. But war definitely disrupts a lot of things.
Okay.
And just be prepared that if you go into basically what you have going on is the EU has just pretty much said, we don't care what Trump does. We're not going to follow it.
Right.
And I've been warning people in Congress. I think the neocons were creating a diversion, honestly, because they were telling them, "Oh, we'll be at war with China, not Russia." And I said, "No, no, no! I'm telling you, all the efforts are in Europe. They're not, with China." And so now because I've been telling them that for probably the last year. And so now I'm getting like calls, "Oh, you're right about that." And I said, "Yeah, look, it's just a diversion tactic. I know what they're doing."
Yeah, you've played this game too long.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been at it for a long time. I know some of these neocons. I know Bill Crystal. Been to dinner with them. I mean, Bill Crystal even spoke at one of our conferences back in the mid '90s. So I know these people. I've sat at dinner tables with them.
Right. I remember when I asked you, what was it like to meet Hillary Clinton? You gave a very interesting response.
All these people are the only head of state that I would say was the smartest was Margaret Thatcher. Trump has. I went to dinner down at Mar-a-Lago when he was president the first time, and back I think it was March of 2020, and he did impress me then. He said he wanted to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, but it was the reason why. He said that he was tired of writing letters to their families, "Your son died for God and country." He said, "What are we doing there? They've been fighting over borders for 1,000 years. What difference are we going to make?" That showed me he was not a politician, because politicians don't look at it that way. The people that die on the battlefield, "Oh, well, so what? That's collateral damage."
Collateral damage.
Trump actually looked at the individuals. So that's why I was pushing for RFK to join him, because I did speak to RFK and I knew he was also against war. So I told him, I said, "Look, this is, you should join him, because at least, the two of you were, the alternative is that Camilla gets in and she's just a puppet for all the neocons."
Right.
And we'll definitely have World War III.
Yeah, similar to how Biden was too.
Yeah, I mean, look, Biden he was not the one making the decisions. He really was not. That was Blinken. And look, I found it curious that you had Blinken, Garland, and Victoria Nuland, all three of them with claims that their families were from the Ukrainian region, and all three claimed that their families were persecuted by Russians. How do three people with family ties to that region get in the Biden White House?
Yeah, very good point.
It's look, there are coincidences and then there's conspiracies, right?
Right. I mean, it raises a lot of questions, certainly.
Yes. I mean, it's just not likely that three people with the same background end up in the same administration. It's just not.
Yeah.
That's not.
I mean, it's really interesting how all of this is interconnected. We were talking about gold and how we kind of shifted to war, and now even the neocons. With all the gold buying that's been going around, aligning with the Basel III requirements for central banks to have those adequate reserves of physical gold, is it possible that we're seeing even a gradual shift toward the reevaluation of gold behind the scenes, maybe the early stages of this? And of course, how is this also connected to the accelerated repatriation of gold by several countries? There's got to be more to this.
Well, actually, it goes back to the geopolitical side. The problem really was when the neocons under the Biden administration removed Russia from SWIFT. To give you a little background, Obama tried that. He went to SWIFT back in 2014 when Russia went into Crimea. He told them to remove them, and they said no. You're not going to turn the world financial system into a weapon. So what did they do? They replaced the head of SWIFT in 2019. And this guy does whatever he's told. Now, the problem that presents where these neocons are very myopic. All they look at is we got to beat Russia. That's it. They don't care about the debt. They don't care about the country. They don't care about what that means. All right. Removing Russia from SWIFT is what set in motion BRICS. All right. Because it sent a red flag to everybody else. Hey, if you don't do what Blinken tells you to do, he'll remove you from SWIFT. All right. They actually, I mean, I never saw something so stupid in my life. They then threatened China. Well, if you help Russia, we'll do the same to you. Hello? You know, don't you understand that China owns 10% of your national debt?
Yeah.
To keep interest rates where they are, you have to sell debt to fund your wars. So what are you really doing? You know, are you saying, you know, lend me $1 billion so I can buy some missiles to shoot your ass?
Right.
I mean, there's just no, they don't, all they look at is their own personal objectives. That's it. You know, they don't look at the economy. They don't look at anything. On YouTube, you'll find a confession basically by McNamara before he died. And he was the neocon that took us into Vietnam. And before he died, he admitted, all right, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Well, 58,000 Americans died, and how many million Vietnamese? Because you were wrong. He said they thought Russia was involved, and it was just a civil war. All right. Also on YouTube is Tony Blair's apology. All right. Taking us going into Iraq. We thought, you know, we were freeing the people from Saddam Hussein, and we subjected them to more sectarian violence. You know, these people only look at one simple issue. They don't consider everything else around it. All right. So, you know, this is why you have BRICS. It's not that the dollar isn't backed by gold or something like that. That's not the issue. The dollar is a reserve currency because the U.S. has the biggest consumer-based economy in the world. So therefore, Japan's got to sell its Toyotas to us. BMW's got to sell their cars over here. Without that, they don't rise from the ashes of World War II. All right. So what's interesting here, and why gold is being basically, you have Russia accumulating more gold, China accumulating more gold. It's not because of regulations or something like that. What it is that it's neutral.
Right.
If you have, you know, $5 trillion worth of U.S. debt in your treasury and you go to war with the United States, they're going to default on it. They're not going to pay you. All right. So this is why you're seeing some of these central banks increase their gold reserves. It's neutral.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about the geopolitical ramifications. So it's, you know, it's got nothing to do with, is the dollar back? Not, you know, those are the old gold bug scenarios that selling things. This is much more serious. All right. You go to war and they default. Simple as that.
Yeah. And that's how they get out of it.
Yes. You can read Herbert Hoover's memoirs. Go to the chapter from 1931. All of Europe defaults. Even Canada defaulted. All right. On their debt. 9,000 banks failed in the United States. Goldman Sachs was selling foreign government bonds in small denominations to moms and pops. All right, so it was being proliferated throughout the economy, and when those bonds defaulted, you wiped out savings of a lot of people. Then they ran to the banks to get cash, and that's why you had 9,000 banks failing.
Yeah.
I remember the 60s. They would always, I thought they were strange at first. You'd see some old ladies out there protesting about any loan to South America or whatever, because their families had been wiped out by those foreign defaults on the bonds. They're all dead now, but, they would be out there with their signs picketing against any kind of a foreign loan. So understand that this is, gold is deeply intertwined with the geopolitical issues. All right. Yeah. And what you will see is as soon as that first bullet is shot in Europe, you're going to see capital controls.
Around
moving money out of Europe, period.
Okay. That makes sense.
And this is what they always do. So this is one of the major factors for moving gold out of London to New York.
Interesting. It's all tied in together.
Yeah, right? It is. And I mean, then, if an audit by Musk shows that there's less gold than that people thought, that's only going to add to it,
Yeah.
But it's not the sole issue.
Of course. The cost of servicing our national debt is staggering, with the interest payments now approaching $1 trillion annually, I believe. The immense financial burden, we know it's unsustainable, but there is going to be a point, I think, where to a degree, the system will have to collapse under its own weight. And I think when this happens, the question then is the most critical is who's going to bear the cost of all this. And with China holding like a significant portion of the US debt, that means they could potentially be at the forefront of some sort of new monetary framework.
The dollar is the reserve currency because of the size of the economy.
Right.
That they need to sell whatever the widgets are to Americans. But the default comes when you're in these Ponzi schemes that you have no intention of paying off the debt. And it's not just the U.S. The entire world is doing this. All right.
Yeah. At the central bank level.
Yeah. So what happens is they issued new debt to pay off the old. All right. The default comes historically when you try to sell the new debt and there's no bid. That no bid will most likely occur. It's a coin toss between Europe and Japan. It won't happen to the United States first. The United States is the last to go. All right. Once they go into war, nobody's going to want to buy their debt.
Yeah.
And you can see the problem already emerging in France. The corporate interest rate in France went below that of government. And the French interest rates, government rates, went above that of Greece. So that's showing you what I've been warning about, that there's a shift from public to private.
Yeah. You've been spot on about this. I mean, I follow you very closely.
It's starting already in France. It's going to spread as a contagion to the rest of Europe. And as long as they keep beating their war drums or whatever, and they think that the neocons, NATO has actually come out and said, well, if the U.S. Backs out, so be it. We're strong enough by ourselves to defeat Russia. This is what they're saying. So you have all these European leaders beating their chest, thinking they can defeat Russia, and they don't need the United States.
Yeah, with Trump, basically.
Right. Yeah, this is. I mean, NATO was trying to raise $100 billion before the election, and they called it to Trump-proof the war. They want war, period.
Yeah.
And look, Russia is the richest nation in the world from a natural resource perspective. Its net worth basically on all the resources from gold and diamonds and energy, et cetera, is about $75 trillion, about twice the amount of the U.S. national debt. So this is what Europe is looking at. They honestly think if they can conquer Russia, they will then finally be able to be bigger than the United States.
No. So this is like, about global dominance, really.
Yeah, it is. It's yeah. Look, there's in France, there's always been this de Gaulle syndrome, where when the troops had freed France, he insisted of being in the front of the parade to pretend like he did something. And then he became president. And when they even joined the euro, they insisted as part of the rules that they put in place that nobody was allowed to issue any currency celebrating Waterloo, their defeat. Belgium did, but they made it as a commemorative coin, so it wasn't for general circulation. But I think, look, I've been even a keynote speaker at a central bank convention in Paris. And it's, I was sitting at the table there with all the heads of the central banks, and the tables, started speaking English because the Italian didn't know how to speak German. It was the one language everybody knew. And the guy from France who was sitting next to me, he was absolutely livid. This is Paris. Should be speaking French. The way they put so much on the language, and I think what it is that they feel that if Napoleon had won, the world would be speaking French instead of English. I mean, I've been to meetings at some of the very biggest institutions in Paris. I'm told I got to bring a translator. So I bring a translator. But you have to listen to what they're saying because, and you got to know, because a lot of them, they just do not understand financial terms. A bull market can be translated into a meat market, and so I have to listen to what she's saying, and then I correct her, and then they look at me and they say, "Oh, you know what she's saying?" I said, "Well, yes, I have to know what all the terms are, and then they dismiss her and the meeting takes place in English. It's just the way it is. And so Macron is pushing to be like the leader of Europe. And that's why you see him saying he wants to send troops into Ukraine.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then Germany is saying, what's happened just now is that the commentators there in Germany on TV are actually saying that maybe they have to send troops into Ukraine as well, because Trump's not going to do it. and you're hearing it from Britain with Starmer. So it looks like they all want to just say to heck with. It's their time to flex the muscles and say, we don't need America. You're obsolete.
Yeah. It seems like we see two kind of dramas playing out. One that's supposed to captivate the public attention, and that seems like the political narrative that's being pushed for globalization. But what's interesting is that what underpins any world order or a new world order or anything about around that kind of scenario, what we see playing out in the world, whether it's globalization or nationalist ideologies, I think what underpins that is the monetary system, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want to go back to gold a little bit because, again, this is all tied in together. And just to add to the intrigue, Scott Bessent, that's the Treasury Secretary for the Trump administration now, he recently spoke about a realignment of the Bretton Woods Agreement. And he emphasized in this podcast about how gold would play a critical role. Do you see that as a sign of a major policy shift? Like, could this be a step towards a new gold-backed settlement system? It's just very interesting because it seems like the U.S. is also positioning itself to dominate a new financial order, and possibly by consolidating physical gold reserves at this point. What do you think?
The problem that they will encounter is that doing anything along those lines, you cannot fix the price of gold. They tried that with Bretton Woods. And the problem then becomes that you create perpetual deflation if you do not increase the money supply. So Bretton Woods collapsed because they fixed it at $35, but they did not limit the amount of dollars that they created. And that's why at the end it collapsed. In order to do that type of a revision of the monetary system, it's going to require first and foremost a revision of our political system. You can't have these, for example, Democrats standing up saying, vote for me and I'll give you this for free. You know, it's you have to end that. It's been the socialistic agenda that has undermined Europe, it's undermined the United States, etc. And because then you're always borrowing to cover those promises. So it's going to require more than just fixing, the dollar to gold or some. We have to change the political system.
Yeah,
and because that's the real root cause. It's kind of like blaming the gun for a murder when it's the guy that pulled the trigger.
Right.
We have to do that. But the impact of inflation, etc. Inflation is necessary. The money supply has to increase to some degree with the population. Otherwise, let's say if you got $10 and there's 10 people, we all can have just one. That's it. All right. If the population now is 20 people, but you didn't increase the money supply, now we're all down to 50 cents. So the two have to be together to some degree. The real problem that people have with the monetary system, etc., really it goes back to this socialistic agenda. That's it. Even take the issue of women needing the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They didn't need the right to vote before socialism. Why? Because basically they couldn't do anything to them. All right. Democracy in Athens, and why they didn't have the right to vote was because initially in Athens, it was just the head of the household who voted, not even the son or wife or children or slaves or anybody. He was like a congressman. He represented everybody in that household. Even if it was a woman who was now the widow and she's the head of the house, then she voted. Okay, so it wasn't necessarily gender oriented. But they also didn't have, this socialistic agenda. The votes were, shall we go to war with Russia, yes or no? So as you've gone into the socialistic stuff, then they get into laws for absolutely everything. For everything from abortion, smoking, whatever, drinking, outlawed drinking because people got drunk, that was a prohibition era. So when you get into that sort of stuff, then everybody needs a right to vote. You're affecting absolutely everybody. So it's we have to pick up the rug and look at the political system.
Right. I mean, there's some very interesting things that have happened over the last few weeks that kind of tie us into this political reform that you're referring to, if I may. Executive orders that have been signed, including even the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and people say this is about exposing corruption. The funny thing is the corruption has always been in plain sight. So do you see some of these executive orders that are being sold to the public, the narrative really, as genuine reform, or is this just political theater that could be preparing us for the system for a new financial architecture? Because we even saw Elon Musk recently at the same moment when these executive orders were being put into place saying that we need all US federal spending to be put on the blockchain. And that's a very big statement coming from the Oval Office.
Well, the problem is that basically there's been no audit trail, period. What Elon Musk has been able to do so rapidly is that he has access right down to the root systems. So he doesn't have to go ask somebody. All right. He's and with using AI, he's able to track everything to do what is being done normally probably would have required about 30,000 people, so it's real. As you know, I used to be part of the vetting process for somebody who wanted to be president. They would send me in to explain the world economy, how it really works. But it was really, I get back and say, what do you think? Do you think he's smart enough to handle it, etc.? And then I was asked, we want you to go down and meet Bush Jr. I said, yeah, okay, fine. And I was told, yeah, but this one's different. I said, what's different? They said, he's really stupid. I said, what? Before 99, it was always, do you think he's smart enough to handle it? And I asked, why would you make somebody stupid president? And they said, he's got the name so we can win. That's where I saw things change. Because then they picked the cabinet. They put in Dick Cheney. They put in everybody. I was even asked if I would take the chief economic advisor in the White House. I said, no, thank you. So when Trump came to office the first time, they did the same thing. Oh, you're not a politician. We have to give confidence to the world that the government's going to be run properly. And he bought into it, and they stuffed that cabinet. You got John Bolton and everybody, and every one of them was stabbing him in the back. He's there to drain the swamp. Sorry, not going to happen. All right. That's why this time he picked his cabinet before he even got to Washington.
Right.
That was a shot across the bow. Okay. I can tell you because I've been on in conversation with people from DC. They are calling Musk and Trump administration as they're equating it to the barbarians at the gate. A friend of mine at Google even said the number one search thing in Washington, D.C. is criminal lawyers and RICO. So it's real. All right. The question is, first, you have to get reins around this expenditure because it's out of control. So I think Musk is going to be able to. He just found $4.7 trillion that nobody knows what it was for. 4.7 trillion.
Yeah.
The corruption is just pervasive. And so that's the first step, getting closer towards like a balanced budget situation. There's a problem with politics is that he can do all these executive orders that he wants. Next guy comes in, he can reverse them all. All right. It's not constitutional level law. My computer is skeptical whether or not there's even going to be an election in 2028.
Yeah.
What I can say is that it's also projecting that the Democratic Party is going to collapse.
Okay. That's some good news.
It's more or less like the Federalists. All right. That the Federalists were against state rights, consolidate all the power in Washington, etc. And that's what Jefferson was against. All right? Mm-hmm. So you're seeing it in the Democratic Party already. You're seeing the conservative ones against the woke ones. The woke, basically, they can't change. To them, it's like, oh, well, we lost only because Biden didn't get out soon enough, or some other excuse. Whereas, as long as they keep that up, they don't understand why they lost. And I think you're going to. I had one, I would say, conservative Democrat that I had spoken to after the debate with Trump and Biden. And he bluntly said to me, he says, well, now the world sees what we've seen for 2 years. Just you're going to see political changes here.
Yeah.
And you also have to understand that what has occurred here with Trump, it is turning into a global contagion. All right. What do I mean by that? If you look in your history books, you'll see Rome overthrew its king in 509 BC. Within a matter of a few months, Greece overthrew its tyrants and democracy was born. So you get these political contagions. Tiananmen Square happened, and then the Berlin Wall falls within a few months. The whole communism thing collapses. This is a political contagion, and Trump is basically causing the same issue. You saw Trudeau having to resign. All right. The German government failed one day after Trump was elected.
Right.
You saw a failure in the French government. All right. Germany's going off for election on the 23rd. All right. The AfD is rising and is at least number 2 now in the polls. Mm-hmm. And they're freaking out over there. Then you have the EU actually interfered in the Romanian election and overthrew it. Those people were voted against war. And the EU made sure it was overthrown. And the EU has actually had the guts to come out and say, well, if Germany does that, we can do the same thing again. You're talking about revolutions here.
Yes.
I mean, these are dictators at this stage in the game.
I think a lot of these people now stepping down, these dictators you're referring to, Justin Trudeau, some of the other names out there, I think, the fact that they're stepping down, in my opinion, based on just the experiences of paying attention to this stuff long before I got into finance and crypto and all this good stuff here, is that they don't have to be in positions of power to pretty much control things still. They can do a lot of their influence from outside of office, is what I'm trying to say, and put other people, install others in there to take their role so they can kind of manage things from the back end, very similar to the Biden administration. And just to share with you what I really believe is going on here, and I think there's just such a deeper connection between some of these executive orders, these actions, how these political leaders are maneuvering around the system, at the same time, the consolidation of physical gold. And I think, now I may sound a little bit crazy here, but I think I'm early, not wrong, but I think they are preparing for some sort of new financial architecture. And it makes sense, that, the fact that Trump is now surrounding himself with young tech innovators and financial minds, people who actually understand the monetary system. For instance, Elon Musk, who originally helped create PayPal. And I think he's one of those key figures. And not to mention the statements. I don't need headlines anymore to confirm what I've already researched for years and what I do know for a fact. But we know for a fact that central banks are already using Ripple's technology at the high levels. It's being leveraged by multiple central banks. And I know I talk to you quite often about this, but I think that, the XRP aligns with some of the Basel III requirements for central banks to hold those adequate gold reserves, which also aligns with the need for a reserve asset like XRP. Rick Rule was on my show once. He confirmed, who subscribed to the Bank for International Settlements, their own interest in the digital asset XRP. So I think in a long-term strategy, whether this is sooner or later, I think that gold is actually being positioned globally as the reserve asset for the new monetary framework, whatever that may look like. And I think XRP will be a global settlement currency that represents that new system. And if you look from the financial landscape, I see all the pieces kind of falling into place. Now, I know that sounds a bit far out there, but what are your thoughts on some of what I said there?
Well, it's a question of power. And I can tell you that the IMF has already created their own digital coin. Mm-hmm. And they have been pitching that they should replace the dollar as reserve currency. But that's part of this whole globalist agenda. To some, I think that the what you're proposing is possible without war. But these people seem to want war, and if that comes first, which may be likely, the revision of the world monetary system comes later.
Yes.
All right. And there is a little bit more of some of the things that, like Trudeau, why did he really resign? He resigned because to avoid a no confidence vote. If there had been a no confidence vote, which he would have lost, then his party would be out of power. So his own party was telling him, you have to step down. So if he resigned, then the Liberal Party still stays in power. Okay, so in a parliamentary system, it's also a little dirtier.
Yeah.
Um, it's a question: does the party stay or does it not? We don't really have that so much in the states. You remove a Republican president, and that doesn't mean the Republican Party's in charge. So they can basically just appoint somebody else, and as to replace Trudeau. But I think honestly, the main thing that they seem to be interested in Europe is the conquest of Russia.
Okay.
All I hear from them is that, oh, Russia's weak. You got Zelensky saying, look, we were able to really hurt Russia a lot, and your army's twice the size of ours.
Yeah. They're demonizing the opponent.
Yeah, and that's what they do. As part of a psychological tactic. They demonize Saddam Hussein, so you go in, you're willing to kill every, Iraqi. They demonized, Assad. They're demonizing Putin, so all Russians are bad. They were trying to, do that with Trump. That all people in the Republican Party are bad. You had even Jamie Dimon at Davos come out and say you're basically trashing 50% of the country. But this is a psychological tactic. You demonize whoever's the head of your opponent, and that's to get everybody basically to hate them.
Yeah.
You look at the polls of Democrats after Hillary. As I've even written a book on it, the plot to seize Russia. I was in the middle of all that stuff. I mean, it was a regime change, the same as what you're seeing coming out of USAID. All right. They were trying to put in Boris Berezovsky to take over Russia. He was an oligarch willing to sell his country out, for a dime. And I was told to put in 10 billion, you'll get 100 billion back. I said, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. I'm not getting involved in regime change. But that's what they were doing. And then they thought all the gold, all the oil, all the diamonds, everything's going to come through the New York trading desks. So they had all the bankers on it. And I mean, that's what ended up being, the long-term capital management crisis, all this stuff. Because they were all in the same trades all the time. But that's why Hillary, when she lost the election, she started the whole Russiagate stuff. The fake Steele dossier was to blame Putin. And when people asked her, well, why would Putin interfere? Oh, well, I had said, one of his elections was rigged. No, it was that they tried to interfere in the 2000 election. And so she thought it was payback because that's what they did to Russia. I mean, one of these days, maybe all this stuff will come out. But I mean,
well, that's the thing, like even with the Doge thing, it's really, they keep touting it's about exposing corruption. But for those who can see with an open mind, the corruption has always been in plain sight. So I don't understand how this is changing anything until we see arrests, really.
Well, it's changing things because you actually have the facts.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, fine. Pelosi left with $202 million. Was she just a good investor, or did she get kickbacks? You don't know unless you investigate it.
But where's the accountability, right? We may see that emerge over the next few years, like you stated.
I think so. What Musk is doing is he's at the core level of the systems. So the data doesn't lie. Whereas before, yes, corruption was everywhere. You could see it, but prove it. You got to take them to court. You got to need witnesses, all this stuff. This is just the data.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not people go to actual prison on this, that's something else. I can tell you, like I said, the number one thing that I've heard from a friend of mine at Google was that the number one thing people are Googling in Washington, D.C. are criminal lawyers at RICO. So they at least expect something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only way you're really going to have transparency is accountability. Otherwise, this is just a pony show, really.
Yes. Look, I think going in here, even if they don't get to arrest anybody, all right, exposing this and its facts, it cannot be denied. All right. So, I mean, he's published a list of people on Social Security up to 360 years old. I mean, come on. The United States isn't even that old. Where's that money going? You know, I can tell you that my dead mother got a check for a stimulus on COVID. I told my sister, do not cash it because it would be fraud. All right. They sent my dead mother a check.
Oh, my God.
So there really is no accountability for any of this stuff. You know, did somebody get a check and they, you know, didn't finagle to get it? It's just that the government sent it to them, so they cashed it. I mean, you know, so there's that situation as well. But I think that at least even if nobody goes to jail, he's going to be able to solve a lot of these issues and put in place checks.
Okay. And shift the narrative as well.
Yes.
On the mainstream. Mm-hmm.
That, you know, it's going to be hard for anybody to deny that this is existing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're putting out lists of 5 million people at 120, you're still getting, you know, Social Security checks, you know?
Well, what's interesting to your point there is that I've studied Cloward Piven strategy very closely and what they teach at Columbia University.
Mm-hmm.
And in this strategy, they talk about destabilizing countries from within to create the distrust between people and the government. And that's kind of where we are today. We want transparency. I'm asking for accountability. So that has already created that distrust. That's part of the Cloward Piven strategy, to destroy the political narrative from within the country so they can bring in new political reform. That's also what we see happening on the main stage today globally with Trump in office now. So I find that to be very interesting, tied into everything we just talked about. So for all we know, that could be the ultimate end game there. Who knows?
Well, look, our computer says that really we're looking at a worldwide collapse of governments.
Exactly.
Republican form of government is the most corrupt. And it will, I'm hoping we go more to a direct democracy, back to more like, you know, Athens, eliminate all this socialistic nonsense. And, you know, I mean, they give us the propaganda that we live in as democracy. I mean, look at Europe when they deliberately created the EU. Not even the head of the EU stands for election. Nobody does. All right. They're appointed by the other heads of state. All right. There is no democratic process in Europe. It is a dictatorship. The European average person has no ability to vote Ursula out of power.
Yeah, she needs to go.
She doesn't stand for election. Zelensky declared martial law, so he doesn't stand for election. This is what goes on over there. All right. So, I mean, you take Vietnam. I mean, you were 18 years old. You were old enough to put a gun in your hand and go kill somebody and die. All right. You were not old enough to even have a drink or vote. But this is democracy.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No, look, it's all propaganda that we get. And I think that's really what all of this is really culminating into, that type of political change.
Yes. Yes.
So
essentially bringing in a new kind of government globally, or a level playing field.
yes, it's I mean, what, what becomes money is secondary. I mean, it could become wheat, it could be, cattle. I mean, it's been many different things over the years.
Oh God, imagine that.
But well, read St. Patrick when he went to Ireland. The standard unit of account was slave girls.
Yeah,
So it's been many different things.
many different currencies.
Yes. So I think we're going to be looking at changing the monetary system, but that comes with the collapse of the republics.
Agreed. Yes. And I think that could tie us into this final segment of this conversation is we'll shift gears to the talk of ending global conflicts. We see Trump now talking about bringing peace and stability. But, I think this is just warmongers playing both sides. And the reason I say this before I ask the question is I've listened very closely to the Trump cabinet appointees who are now standing side by side with Israel. And I don't have a problem with Israel. It's just after, the genocide and things that have occurred, and then for him to just walk into the Oval Office and Trump pull up the chair for him, it makes me raise a lot of questions there too, because no one can condone what was done. I mean, we have to be realistic about the situation. The horrors that I've seen are just out of this world. It really brings tears to your eyes. And how could this be happening when we're supposed to be bringing peace? And you have a murder just standing there with no accountability to that. So do you think there's an actual push for peace?
War. Okay. I mean,
Okay.
There are atrocities in every war on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
World War II, 60 million people died.
Yes.
60 million. I mean, there's always more civilians who die than soldiers. That is basically the outcome of war. And it doesn't matter what century you're looking at or whatever it is. It's, I mean, there's supposed to be the rules of law for war. They don't necessarily follow them in any war.
Yeah, not even the United Nations, who are supposed to be the ones keeping the peace.
It's United Nations is it's just an old boys club. That's basically it. It's whoever whatever. I mean, legally, you take the ICC, International Court of Criminal Justice. I mean, they indict Putin. Legally, they have no basis to do so. The very terms are they can only indict someone who is of a member country. The United States is not a member. I've had dinner with them. I went to dinner with the people from the court. All right. The United States is not a member. Look it up. Why? Because they didn't want any U.S. leader to be charged. Russia's not a member. All right. So why are you charging Putin? It's just political. That's it.
Of course.
So when you start getting into things of this nature, all right, and you want to pretend you're above the law, this, that, the other thing, it's, everything is up for grabs, basically. It's just the way it is. It doesn't matter what culture you're looking at, what century you're looking at. The act of actually waging war itself is basically, in my opinion, that's the war crime. Because look, a soldier's always going to do whatever they're going to have to do to survive. Simple as that.
Of course.
Regardless of what side they're fighting for. It's the people that make the decisions to go to war that are the ones that really should be, called to answer their actions.
Yeah. I think a lot of the rhetoric, though, about peace is really unfortunately, I have to say it like this. I don't like to sugarcoat things. I think it's just really a cover for restructuring, I'm sorry, the global power dynamics.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, just ask anybody in the former Yugoslav area. You know, oh, NATO's there to bring peace. No, they weren't. They're just bombing the hell out of different people and killing an awful lot of civilians. Oh, but in the name of peace.
Yeah, and for real estate property. I mean,
look, I mean,
that's something else.
The very simple solution for Ukraine was we had it. The Minsk agreement, the Donbass, they're mostly Russians there. People don't know their history. Khrushchev is the one that rebuilt Kiev. All right, Brezhnev, his successor, was born in the Donbass. It's, you know, Russians have been there in Crimea for hundreds of years. All of a sudden, Ukraine, oh no, you can't speak your own language. You're going to have to be Ukrainian. It's our territory now. It's nonsense. Over 8 million Ukrainians have fled their country because they disagree with Zelensky. I've spoken to people there, and I can tell you that they basically view Zelensky as a traitor. He ran on peace. When he went in office, the death toll for Ukraine was only 13,000 people. Now it's 1.1 million. What are you fighting for? To take the Donbass and force those people to become Ukrainian and speak Ukrainian? This is not. He's the war criminal. They quote them. If he was on fire, I've been told they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. Wow.
I mean, that's just very vivid.
Well,
I have a wild imagination. So.
You know, it's Putin. No, it's also, I'm sorry. Just look at what's going on right now. Zelensky doesn't want to have peace under any terms. And he's turned to Europe. Oh, you got to create an army. We got to go in. The hell with the United States. And you have Merkel basically saying that they negotiated in bad faith for the Minsk agreement only to buy time for Ukraine to build an army. So these two people should be at the table. Why would Putin even sit at the table with them? Whatever they say can't be trusted. So they're all upset. Oh, we're Trump's meeting with Putin without us. Well, what would you add? Nothing.
Wow. I mean, a lot to take in there, a lot to think about, especially for the audience. So with everything that we've covered, from the gold market to the Bretton Woods realignment, blockchain, geopolitics, and the economic reforms, what is your overall big picture outlook for the months ahead?
It certainly appears as though we're looking at a breach in the relationship between the United States and Europe. They are flexing their muscles. They want to basically say that they can do this without the United States. The hell with the United States. They don't want peace. I think we're probably still looking at war, regardless that Trump's there or not. Doesn't matter. They're going to create war, and it looks like I would be concerned from about May on. And probably next year might be even the worst part of it.
Yeah.
But they have their sights on Russia, and they think a third time is going to be the charm. You had Hitler draw once, Napoleon. So I guess the third time is the charm for them, I guess. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, also it would be a way for them to have a scapegoat outside the debt cycle as well. So there are certain things that
the debt is going to collapse without the war.
Agreed.
So I think they're basically, um, they need war to be a distraction. Otherwise, you're going to have all the farmers with their pitchforks dragging them out of the parliament, you know.
Yeah. Whether we go to war or not, though, I think those farmers and with their pitchforks and Americans too, we need to hold these people accountable because we never voted for war. And it's not a democracy if they can go to war and put all this money into it without our permission.
Well, I think this whole process is opening the eyes to a lot of people.
Yes.
Like
Certainly.
I said, you know, Democrats are splitting. I mean, I even spoke to my cousin. I mean, both my fathers and my uncles, they were Democrats. They would not vote for this stuff. I mean, they were clearly more conservative. It's like, I saw one Democratic analyst said the reason Trump won is he stole all our issues from 1980. But, you know, look, that's the way things develop. You know, there's a cycle to everything, and the Democrats just went too far to the left. And as a result, they're just going to split. So we're looking at a lot of political change between here and 2028.
I can certainly see that. And that would also accelerate this reset of the monetary system, something I pay very close attention to. All right. Well, Martin, are there any final thoughts and maybe what our audience should be looking for as all this unfolds? And of course, how can they mitigate some of these scenarios? Should they be investing in gold? Should they be holding more cash? What do you think?
A little bit of both, basically. I can tell you, being in Florida when we had the two hurricanes, if you didn't have cash, the internet was down, so you couldn't even use a credit card. That's the whole problem with that monetary type system. You do need, I think you need something physical at the end of the day. But you know, you go in the war and they just do an EPM bomb across the top of the United States, and there goes the electric grid. You know, so I mean, what are you going to do? But I mean, I think that, you know, this is a process of people are going to be awakening. It's going to take time. You know, a lot of people just believe in whatever the government tells them. I mean, that will be coming to an end, but they have to be shown first. They can't be told.
Of course. Yes. I totally agree with you. And Marin, it's been an absolute pleasure. I truly appreciate you coming on here and sharing your insights with our audience. They keep asking for you to come back on, and I hope we could do this again next time, and maybe we'll focus more on some of the financial markets.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's we got to get the word out, and more people that understand it, you know, eventually we get to that point where we get the reform.
And we're going to get there. So, okay, thank you guys, and have a wonderful day. Take care.